to the 10 Washington Podcast.
Well, hello there, everybody, and thank you so much for joining me once again. And thank you for the assistance of Paul Gatz, my executive producer. And, of course, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our good friend Tom Mahalik at Tom's Place, the finest in men's clothing at the most ridiculously cheap prices. 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market, 7 days a week. That's where you will find Tom, and you'll find Tom's Place, and you'll find the clothing that you need. Joining me this week is the acclaimed sportscaster, both radio and television. He's probably best known for the wildly popular Sportsline television program, which aired for years on global television. He is also the author of his own Substack and the author, at least, of two books. His latest, this one right here, titled Madness, The Rise and Ruin of Sports Media. My guest this week, Mark Hebscher. Hebscher, my friend, it is good to see you, and congratulations. A wonderful book.
Thank you. Yeah, second book, too. And so now I think I've probably officially, my title now should be like broadcaster / author.
Yes.
I think I've kind of reached that, and I think I'd already had aspired to that. Way back in the recess of mine, it was like, wouldn't that be a nice title to have? Right? Yeah. And
I think the last time we talked was when you released your last book, which was a wonderful book written about someone that no one knows, that anyone who cares about sports in Canada should know.
Yeah, I think I struggled with that at the time. And I had never heard of George Orton before, and not that he's any more famous now that I've written a book about him, but it sort of goes to show you, the process of doing research and finding out stuff that, you thought was the truth for 100 years wasn't the truth.
Yeah, well, and that brings me to a point about your grandfather and a story about Babe Ruth. Everybody talks about Babe Ruth's first professional home run ball, not major league, professional, because he was in AAA, and they are professionals. Mm-hmm. Was hit into Lake Ontario somewhere around off Hanlon's Point. But you're saying not true.
No, not at all. I'm not saying that that Babe Ruth didn't hit a ball into Hanlon's, the Lake Ontario at Hanlon's Point, but not on that particular occasion. And the reason for that is my grandfather told me. He was one of those, I heard this. He was one of those guys who went, come on. He says, here, I was there. I said, well, you were there. Now, by this time, he was in his 80s, and I was in my, 30s, I guess, or something. I said, well, you were there. And he told me the story, that it was a Saturday. It was a Labor Day long weekend, and he was selling newspapers at the corner of Bay and Melinda, which was the old Toronto Telegram building, and he was selling the telly outside, and he was, extra, read all. He was like that kind of a guy. He was a kid, 12 years old. And so on that Saturday, he sold some papers, took the ferry to Hanlon's Point to see Ruth pitch, because he had been hawking this Babe Ruth guy all summer long, exploits in the newspaper, stuff like that. And now he was going to finally go and see him pitch. And he did. And what he did was he got a seat on the third base side, so even with third base. And Ruth had hit a ball that off the crack of the bat, he thought was going to be extra bases. My grandfather's watching this occur in front of him. The ball ends up in the bleachers, in the low bleachers, like the third or fourth row. It was sort of a line drive. And these were rare home runs. And what happened was, so anyway, he's telling me the story, and I say, Zeta, that's grandfather. I say, Zeta, what happened to the ball? I'm thinking, like, where's that ball? If it's not in the bottom of Lake Ontario, as Laura would have had it, where is that ball? Right. First thing I thought of, okay? I said, what happened to the ball? He goes, he says, well, they had to give it back. I said, what, they had to give it back? He goes, if you kept the ball, that would be larceny. You'd get arrested.
I know.
Ted, so now I'm going, wow, like, tell me other things I don't know, because there's a book in here somewhere. These stories were wonderful.
How long was it in NFL or CFL, for that matter, before they allowed patrons to keep the ball? And now in the NFL, you have to give the ball back because it's got a chip in it. Yeah. But they give you a run. They give you a replacement.
Oh, in football, never. I mean, you could never. No, there's no giving the ball away. If you threw the ball away, you got fined. Like, that kind of thing. It was a big deal. The football, especially. Basketball, yeah, always would go back. Soccer balls always would go back. Tennis balls, nah, not so much. Hockey pucks, you didn't have to. No. Obviously, there was not obviously. I shouldn't say that. I don't know for a fact that there wasn't a time in the NHL where it was like, hey, bring that puck back here, buddy. That's worth 15 cents or whatever it was. So at that time, there was no such thing as collecting baseballs or autographs for that matter. That wasn't a big thing at all. Mm-hmm. And so it was like, okay, you got the ball. That's great. No one was going, hey, keep it. It's Babe Ruth's first ever. No, you got to give it back or you're going to get arrested. So when he told me that story, it just opened up so much about so many questions. And I didn't realize, Ted, that at the time, if you hit a ball on the bounce that ended up in the stands, home run.
I read that. I had to reread that when I read that, and I thought, wow.
I know. And
then think about when you were as a kid, when you were playing baseball, and you had played on those diamonds that had the little fences. How many times you'd hit one and it'd bounce over the fence? Oh, ground rule double, and you go, damn! Now, wow, home run. Wow,
I know. So immediately, as soon as I heard that, now remember, at the time he told me that, there was no internet. So this is many years ago. He's telling me these stories. So fortunately, I taped everything, right? On a handy cam or whatever they were called back in the day. So I had all this. And as I'm going through it, I'm going, wow, now I can just press of a button or, newspapers.com, whatever, to confirm what he told me. So it was a beautiful thing. It was like right there. And so I just learned a lot, and I thought that's part of the history of sports media.
Have you talked to the people at the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame about this story? I mean, are they aware of it? Because I think they're still
unless they bought a copy of the book, they're not.
Yeah, well,
I mean, are they the authority on? Are they the authority? Do they have every story? I don't think they do. They don't have a lot of funding. It's and I don't think they spend a lot of money on researching stories. I know there's a couple of people that do, but it's hard work, and there's no pay for that, and it's deep dives. Right. It's got to be a labor of love. So for me, this was a labor of love. Discovering this stuff, you're like a detective, eh, Ted? Yeah. You say, I know something that hardly anybody knows, and I can hardly wait to tell them.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. There's a fascinating book by. And I wish I could remember the name of the book. It escapes me right now. Terry O'Reilly is the author, but one of the people he talks about in there is Captain Video, former coach
Roger Nielsen.
Roger Nielsen, and Roger Nielsen was a guy who got a lot of rules changed because of things that he did. Like he would go and he would pull the goalie, but as the goalie was pulled, you tell the goalie to put your stick across the net and then skate away, right? But there was no rule saying you couldn't do that, so they changed that rule. And there was another rule where there was a penalty, right? And a penalty shot, the goalie would rush right toward the player to stop him from coming in on. No, you can't do that either. So they had to make up a rule for that. But anyway, I digress. So go back to your grandfather. So, I guess you could say for a stretch, you could say he was in the media. He sold newspapers, but who was it? Was there someone in your family? Was it someone externally who inspired you to want to get into radio/television/author?
Probably, first of all, I loved sports, and I was, as you were, Ted, right into radio as a youngster. And I detail that in the book. As a radio listener, as one discovering new voices and sounds and music from Motown and spinning the dial and finding all these wonderful radio stations, as well as the ones in Toronto that I grew up with and the personalities and all of that. So I was immersed in that. I just loved that. I loved radio, loved hearing new music on radio. And of course, television for what was available. Yeah, it was our entertainment. It's like a lot of kids, suburban kids, city kids, that kind of a thing. So that's sort of where it started. And my grandfather and my dad and my uncle would take me to Toronto Maple Leaf games when I was a little teeny kid, like really small, down at Fleet Street Flats to watch Toronto Maple Leafs AAA team against, whoever they were playing, Syracuse, Buffalo, Rochester, Red Wings, Columbus Clippers, all that stuff. So, you got, and we would go to Christie Pitts when there was no AAA team and watch the Toronto Maple Leafs inter-county team. That's how crazy we were for baseball. And of course, Leaf tickets once a year. Once a year, usually Christmas time, my dad would, score some tickets.
And so I think that this must be a painful thing to you, for you to see what's going on in the state of media in general right now. We'll talk about sports media, and even the title of your book, right? The Rise and Ruin of Sports Media.
Yeah.
And I found that interesting because I was discussing the book with a friend, and I said, what's really interesting? The highest paid people on television right now, among the highest paid people on television right now, I'm talking broadcasters, I'm not talking actors, or producers or directors, are not the people who do the late evening news or the 6 o'clock news in the States, which is their prime time, or the Today Show or CBS This Morning or Good Morning America. They're not the ones making the big money. The big money guys are the sportscasters,
the presenters.
Yeah.
And the play-by-play, of which, anything else. You've got your top.
Tom Brady is I mean, I don't understand why they're paying Tom Brady that much money. It's like, if Tom Brady wasn't there, would the ratings drop down, as you point out in your book? And the answer is not a chance.
There's more to it, though, than the ratings, right? Because if the sponsor connects with Tom Brady, if the gambling company, DraftKings, connects with Tom Brady, if Tom Brady is the guy when you're going out and selling the network and the program, and he's the one shaking hands at those Friday night cocktail parties with the sponsors,
right,
then you've got value beyond what the television ratings are. Simple as that. You've got the most influential people. I'd love to meet Tom Brady. Let me tell you a story, Ted. This happened to a friend of mine. He was at a charity dinner, and Tom Brady was the guest speaker. Brady did a great speech, inspirational, terrific. And then Brady said, "Now," he says, we're aiming to raise $1 million. We're only at whatever $100,000. I'm going to contribute half of what's the remaining is. And he says to the audience, "You're going to contribute the rest. And here's the deal. I've got 50 footballs. I'm going to sign each one of them. You're going to pay. You're going to donate. And I'm going to throw you a touchdown pass. And then you can say that you caught a touchdown pass from Tom Brady. Who's in?" And my friend said, everybody in the audience, and this is 1,000 people or so, everyone put their hands up. They had to have a lottery to see who could donate. I think it was $5,000. A lottery to see who could be one of the 150 people that was donating $5,000 to say that. I mean, I just thought, can you imagine this guy if you're trying to make a sale or you're trying to sign a long-term deal with your sponsor for life that makes your $40 million salary more than worth it? That's the power of Tom Brady.
Isn't part of it, though, the clash of the egos between the network executives to say, "Aha, we got Brady, you didn't get Brady."
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And is Brady better than Tony Romo? Right? I mean, you'll have this argument. You're gonna who is the Pat Summerall and John Madden of today's football tandems? Who is the best play-by-play color duo? Well, it's the guys who did the Olympics for CBC and for like Mike Johnson together with Chris Cuthbert was Dream Team, right? The whole panel Dream Team. So should we expect that? Should we expect every big event to have the absolute best in announcers? I think we should.
Yeah, and yet in your book you write, and I'll quote, "In my heart of hearts, I couldn't recommend entering the business. That business was teaching me."
Yeah.
I read that and I thought, I can understand that, but by the same token, I mean, I know that a lot of the community colleges have cut their radio and television courses.
Huge.
But again, who's making the big money on television right now? It's the sports guys.
Live sports is what it's about. Live sports.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And look at the drama that we go through. Look at the drama we just went through in the Olympics. I mean, it's incredible. And you can't duplicate it. But the more people that are interested, like, for example, if I would have told you 10 years ago that people would be going crazy for a Canada-US women's final, that there would be arguments as to what was more popular, the women's team, women's Canada-US, or the men's Canada-US, we said no chance. But there's, it's been slow, but it's also been, quicker than a lot of people thought. Like, hey, we got to start recognizing this. And have we gone too far now? Or do we have it so much that we want the women's coverage to be equal to the men's coverage? is the popularity equal? Are sponsors paying as much to cover, the women's hockey as the men's hockey? And now the debate has become more about the gender than about like the love of hockey and, how we embrace it and how it's great, as opposed to comparing, women's tennis to men's tennis, women's golf to men's golf. That's an old thing. Come on.
Well, you talk about in your book, you talk about the ruination of sports media and how the fact that in Toronto, for example, you've got a hockey team, a baseball team, a football team, a soccer team, a women's
basketball team. You got
a women's basketball team, a men's basketball team. They're all owned by the same company. Mm-hmm. They're by the people who work for them and also own the media that covers these teams. So therefore, they can't be very honest about what they're saying. And I wonder about that.
The narrative has to be different, I think, Ted. I think what happens is when you're working for a company that has the teams, the narrative has to be different. The narrative can't be on a critical one, as an independent journalist might do. The narrative has to be based on something more positive. That's the expectation of nowadays, right? If you're going to be critical, you're going to stand out. If you're just going to sort of toe the company line and make it an interesting feature and don't make it seem as if the parent company is in the wrong, then you're going to probably, okay, is that being a journalist? No, of course it isn't. And those people will admit to you that's not journalism. That's you're an extension of the PR department.
Are you saying Martinez is he an extension of the PR department of the Toronto Blue Jays?
No, but I think we all knew that Buck's role is very different, right? That he could be, I don't want to say a cheerleader. Yeah, he could be a cheerleader, right? But at the same time, if something happened, he would not hesitate to say, that was horrible.
Right.
He may not mention the person or, run them through the ringer because he's a former player, but he's still the bigger of a booster you are, the more critical you can be. Like if you're that big a fan and you're that invested in the Toronto Blue Jays, you can say up and away and hey ho, way to go, right? It's supposed to not going overboard, but if something happens that was a mistake, you've got every right to say that was a screw up right there. That was, that should never have happened and blah, blah, blah. Now, if he was to say something like, boy, that acquisition of that player was not a good move at all, that was not a good trade, that's a different story. So Buck doesn't have to walk as fine a line as the others because of his role as a commentator, an expert. He played the game. That's right. He's earned it. He's earned it. That's another thing. You've got to earn it. You can't be 1 or 2 years into broadcasting or 6 years into broadcasting. And suddenly you're elevated to a position where your opinion, your commentary, your years of experience, people are like riveted. No, I'm sorry, that comes with experience. And don't listen to people that say, who cares about what an old guy thinks? The experience of having lived through collapses before, losing seventh games before. Who was around in 1985, Ted, when they had a 3-1 lead in the American League Championship Series and lost to Kansas City because they pitched to George Brett? They pitched to George Brett. Do you remember? Ted's everyone saying, just don't pitch to George Brett. For all of 1985, just don't pitch to him. Don't pitch to him. Don't let him beat you. Well, they let him beat him. And that to me was as difficult, more difficult than for these people. And I hate to say it, for these people that, have been fans for a few years and they were in the 7th game of the World Series last year.
Let's go back and talk about Mark Hebscher and the great highlights in your career. Let's talk about the birth of sports, about Sportsline, because I think it's fair to say that you're probably best known for that. I mean, it's not fair to say that's the only thing you're known for, because that is not true, because your extensive radio days in radio as well, and also the fact that you're an author, a 2-time author now. But let's talk about Sportsline and how that all came to be back in 1984.
As one person who had commented on one of the social media, I think during a review, someone had posted in a review saying, I didn't know Mark Hebscher had a career before Sportsline, which I thought was, okay, that's fair. Unless
he just showed up one day and said, give this guy a television show.
Yeah. But I find it interesting because I don't know the age of this person or whatever, but I guess if you didn't grow up in Southern Ontario and read the newspapers in the 80s or whatever, or 90s, you weren't aware. Never searched it. So I found that to be interesting. So it's sort of a whole new audience kind of a thing. And if you were to say to the audience now and say, okay, this is the deal. You didn't get any sports. You didn't get anything, not a sniff, unless you picked up the phone and called the arena to find out the score. You didn't know anything until the late night sports came on. And you didn't know, and you never saw any highlights of anything until Sportsline began in the mid 80s, 1984. And you had to wait up till 11:30 at night. But boy, you not only got highlights, you got commentary, you got who the scorers were, you got who the assists came from, you got airy badinage, you got jokes, you got nicknames, right? It was completely different from what had been before that, which was a 4 or 5 minute sportscast at the end of the news and the weather. And now let's go over to Bill with the sports and hi, everybody. And right, very formulaic. This was wide open. It was a half an hour. And people, the critics, AKA the newspaper writers, said, it'll never last. Who's going to watch a half an hour of sports? They're going to turn to Johnny Carson after the first 5 minutes.
Those are the same people who said, who's going to watch a 24-hour golf network?
Yeah. And you're going to have that. A lot of
people.
You're going to have that in everything. You're going to have that in every. You're always going to get the naysayers. Of course, it's the easiest thing in the world. It'll never last. Right. And so when it started, it was a one-man show. It was Bob McCowan, who had a pretty good reputation as a sports talk show host in Southern Ontario. Now, I won't say outside of the GTHA because the signal, CKFH, the signal that of the station he worked for, didn't go that far. But he was well known in Toronto anyway. And they started a late night show and he was the host. Not a lot of satellite technology, but it was still a half an hour. But it was good, long form journalism. You had reporters out there doing stories, a little more in depth on the Blue Jays and the Maple Leafs. And the Argonauts and some other stuff. And then I got a phone call after doing radio from Ray Hurd, the vice president of Global Television. And he said, look, we're thinking of, having a 2-man sports anchor show, 11:30 at night, Sportsline. You've heard of it. And I go, yeah, I watch it. It's been on the air for a few years. Would you like to be a part of it? Jumped right in. I knew Jim from City TV. Had been there for quite a while. And I was working in radio. So it was a natural, worked out really well. And then they basically didn't say anything. They just said, just be yourselves. And here's a bunch of highlights every night. Here's a bunch of highlights. Here's the stories that our reporters have done. Stay abreast of what's going on in the world of sports, naturally. We're huge fans. And the sponsors love it, what you're doing. Just do what you're doing.
And this is Jim Taddy. We should point out for the...
it was kind of like I don't want to say like cable TV was, but back in those days, you had community cable, right?
Yep.
And so at first, it sort of had a feeling like it was like, advanced community cable. Even though it was the Global Television Network and we had big shows on and, network shows, it was sort of like you could get away with kind of stuff that they would have never done on CBC television. Right. You know this, Ted, ever. Keep it in frame. You keep it in frame and you keep it in context.
Because it was raw. That's what made it so attractive.
Yeah, and as you know, when you did your show Off the Wall, I mean, it was basically that show Sportsline was off the wall, but it was a sports show. What's next? I don't know. What's not? I don't know. What do you know? I don't know. What's that? Oh, there's a highlight. I haven't seen it. Have you seen it? No, I haven't seen it. Oh my God, look at that. Was that a joke? Yeah. Did you just make a reference to a song? All of that stuff in the context of we're delivering you the sports news. We're delivering you the sports highlights. We're trying to entertain you. We're trying to keep you engaged so you don't flip to another channel.
How much were you guys influenced by what was going on at ESPN?
Zero.
At the time?
We never got ESPN. We had heard of it before. Never. You couldn't get it in Canada.
No.
And TSN was just starting out around the same time that I started in 1984. And they didn't, well, mind you, they had the Blue Jays the following year. They scooped the Blue Jays in 85, which was great for them. But but you know what? They were very conservative, still very CBC-like. And they didn't want any of their people to be personalities like me and Jim. So they kind of went the other way, saying you're going to wear the same outfit, the same black blazer with the TSN logo, and you're going to, CBC style. And so I think that made us even more attractive to some people. And inevitable comparisons, which you always like to have that. You always like to have competition. Who's delivering the sports news better for half an hour? Is it Global? Is it TSN? Is it CHCH TV? Is it CBC? Is it CFTO with Joe Tilley and Lance Brown? Like what's going on? So it was good.
And because it was new, and because it was raw, and because it was something that was not being challenged, you could say whatever you wanted to a certain degree, and you weren't afraid to take your shots at athletes and athletes here in Toronto as well. Did
No.
they ever come back to you and say, the athletes themselves, by the way, don't talk to me like that, or I might rearrange your nose?
You bet they did. Absolutely. Absolutely. Part of it was this. If you're going to say things about players or a team, you better show up the next day and be prepared to see them face to face. Nothing more cowardly than writing stuff like that and hiding behind, nowadays in social media, hiding behind an avatar or a name. But back then, if you were going to take pot shots, show up in the clubhouse. Guy calls you out and say, "Hey, I didn't like what you wrote about me. I heard what you said about me. All right, fine. Let's not fight about this, but let's hear what your problem is, and let me explain to you what my job is." And so, for the most part, especially nowadays, the players all know what the job of the media is. They know it's to incite, to poke the bear, to get the clip, to get something controversial. They know. They all know that. But back then, it was different. Hey, how's it going? Hey, how are you? Guy wasn't going, is this on the record? Our conversation? There's a lot more.
A guy that you probably didn't take a lot of shots at because he was so damn good that it'd be difficult to do that when he was playing was Wayne Gretzky, and that's the first chapter of your book, the great Sweatsky. Tell that story.
Yeah.
It's a very funny story for those of us who have done interviews with people. I mean, close up, next a half a foot away from them, you can understand what went wrong. Not wrong, but what could go wrong.
Right. So
weird.
Yeah, the advancement in makeup and hair technique and 4K cameras has made sort of the between periods interview, the sweaty player interview, as I like to call it, a little less appealing. Because, when a player in those days, when I did intermissions on the Global Television Network for Toronto Maple Leaf games, the deal was in the first intermission, it was a player from the home team. In the second intermission, it was a player from the visiting team. And then after the game, it was, whoever the post-game hero was, the goalie, whatever, the goal scorer, that type of a thing. And of course, pre-game, you would interview guys, but they wouldn't be sweaty, but you'd interview them well before the start of the game to get some comments for your pre-game show. So my responsibility was doing all the interviews. And so when you're talking to a guy between periods and you're going for 4 minutes or 5 minutes even sometimes, because they don't want to spend money to produce a feature, it's easier just to talk to a player. This is the only sport that does this. You cannot have an extended conversation with a hockey player or with any other athlete while the game is on, halftime of a game or between periods, but you can in hockey. I always found that to be fascinating. And also, what do you ask the person? What kind of, like, the guy just came off the ice. He's sweating. This is Wayne Gretzky, sweating like crazy. He just hit the post, for example, or hasn't scored in 8 games, and the pressure's on. Who knows what's going on at home? And you have to sort of navigate your way through this while he's sitting next to you and sweating profusely, in Wayne's case, because the hot lights of the studio are in there, and you're in basically what's a sauna bath. It's a makeshift studio in a lot of cases, right? And it's hot, cramped in there. And also, too, there's sights and there's smells that, are more associated with a locker room than a studio, if you know what I mean. So through all of this, you have to frame 2 people in the same shot with a camera and in behind the logo for Global Television. And so Wayne and I had to be seated quite close together. And now, it's ripe and he's sweating and he's got a famous nose, as you know. And there's a ball of sweat that is at the end of his nose and it will not fall off. So as I'm interviewing him, I know
walk up and go bing, bing.
You just want to go like this, right? And so I know that the audience is watching and they're going, why the hell is he, why doesn't he wipe that sweat off his nose? Doesn't he know that everyone can see that he's got sweat in his nose? No, he doesn't. He's talking away, man. He's used to sweating and he's sweating. And this ball of sweat drops. And where does it drop, Ted? It drops because he's leaned over. And again, it's a 2-shot. We're tight. Right on the crotch of my pants, because I'm sort of shifted over towards him for the 2-shot to be framed properly, blah, blah, blah. My foot is here. His shin pad is there. His skate is right next to my Florsheim shoe. I can't move. I'm kind of immobilized here, right? And now he's sweating, and now the sweat is starting to cascade off that famous nose right into the ochre of my aunt's pay there. And I'm live. I got 4 more minutes. I got a voice in my ear going, you got another 4 minutes with Wayne. I'm like, so by the end of the interview, it's pretty uncomfortable. And let me tell you, it's a sensation that you just don't want. And it's live television, and you're saying to yourself, you just got to stick through it. It's live.
For the longest period of time, he was the most beloved player, Canadian hockey player in the history of our game. Nowadays, it's a little different because politics has reared its ugly head, and he lives in the States, and he's been seen playing golf and hanging out with the President of the United States, who's not a beloved figure here in Canada.
True that.
I think I can be honest by saying that.
You can.
Your thoughts? How some people are reacting with such hatred against him because of the fact that he has seemingly cozied up to Trump at a time when Trump's trying to take us over, and there's a hatred for him.
Yeah, I think there's a social media campaign out there by, quote unquote proud Canadians that probably started against the hate against Gretzky. Probably started with the fact that he played for Edmonton, which wasn't their favorite team. So let's just put that in there right off the bat. Regardless of what he did for Canada at the Olympics and all those types of things, and blah, blah, he played for a Canadian team. So every other team, fans of those teams, Calgary fans hated him. Not hated like, disgusted by him, but
no,
could dislike him. So that's a starting point. That's a seed that's been planted. Now he gets married to an American actress, leaves Edmonton, thank goodness for him, right, to have a life because he was in a fishbowl there. Right. And now she's the problem. Okay. So now it's not just him. It's the two of them. It's him as part of a married couple with this woman, this Janet who took him away, this harlot, this whatever. So now there's another level of dislike or questionable. What kind of questionable decisions does this guy make off the hockey rink? Right. Yeah. And then, of course, he's playing for the Los Angeles Kings. And then, his children are born in the United States.
Not that was his choice.
No. But again, and now the topper of it all is, really? So you're not only endorsing this guy, you're having your picture taken with this guy who's killing us, all that type of thing. Now, if there was as much hate for Alexander Ovechkin and his picture with Putin, with his arm around Putin, right? Then you might have a reasonable comparison.
There is in this house.
Right. And absolutely. And there should be. And so let's make that comparison there. Let's really talk about who's really doing terrible damage to the world and who's friends with that person. Right. Yeah. Let's get away from the Jeffrey Epstein for a little while. But yeah, okay, let's go. Let's do Trump. And if you want to base every single athlete, entertainer, and broadcaster for that matter, and what their political beliefs are because what they put out on social media, I got news for you. So, Ted, I said this in the book. I never knew what Ron McLean's political leanings were. No. I never knew what his favorite team was. I never knew what his favorite political party was. To me, he was equal in his either praise or effusive praise or denial of or dislike of. Fine, be consistent. But now I'm not interested in someone's politics to the point where other people are pointing out the fact that, look at this, he had his picture taken with this horrible, horrible person. I just don't want to go there. I try to want to stay away from it. It's such a cesspool of opinion, and it's all about hatred. There's just people that can't resist being part of it. It was almost like when you had a talk show and radio and someone would phone in, you kind of wanted someone to take another opinion, to take the conversation that way, to get two sides. But then it would get to be ridiculous where people were only there to complain.
It does. It does. I mean, I've had in the span of 5 or 10 minutes, I've had people calling in accusing me of being a hard right conservative and a hard left liberal. And I'm thinking, how is it possible that I'm doing both of these things on this program? But thanks for your call anyway. But you know the old adage when people say, be careful, you don't want to meet your favorite hockey player or your favorite movie star or your favorite hero growing up, because the odds are you're going to be disappointed.
Exactly. What expectations did you have from Wayne Gretzky off the ice? Honestly. What expectations did you have? But when you see someone like Trump, before that Schwarzenegger, any personality that ended up being a politician to the level of we've got now, you realize that's what it is. Like it's recognition. Why is this person running for politics? They've never been interested in politics. Oh, it's their name. People are going to recognize that name on the ballot and go, I know who that is. I like their persona and what I've seen. Good hockey player, good actor, good singer.
not an easy thing though to be honest with me here, and I know you will be because that's your nature. But it's no, I'm serious. It's not easy to like someone and be negative about them at the same time.
I agree.
Whether that be a politician or whether that be an athlete. If it's your favorite athlete and you think, and this guy's not only is he my favorite hockey player, football player, but he's a great guy. But he's done something that I don't like, but I don't really want to talk about it, But
Ted,
you got to talk about it.
There's one guy, you and I, and we were there for it, right? Bobby Hull. What was your opinion of Bobby Hull growing up, right? And then when you met Bobby Hull in a particular situation where you went, oh my, he's not nice. He's the exact opposite of what I had thought, dreamt, believed him to be. What a shock that was. And you were an adult at the time. You went, oh my goodness, really? Is he like that? Because
conversely, growing up, I love Johnny Bauer. I got to meet Johnny Bauer later in life.
Exact opposite.
I was friends with Johnny Bauer. I'm not telling
weren't you guys neighbors in Mississauga?
10 minutes away from my house. And he used to come to my golf tournament all the time. And he was nicer than you would have imagined him to be. It's like
way too nice. Way too nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Ted Woloshyn returns in a moment.
I've had the great fortune to say that I've been associated with one of Toronto's finest names in men's clothing for more than 25 years. Tom's Place. Founded by Tom Mahalick's father in 1958, Tom's Place offers brand name men's apparel at unbeatable prices. But more than that, they boast a long-serving, knowledgeable, and friendly staff that can assist you whether you're looking for casual or formal attire. And they have plenty of first-class tailors on site. In addition, Tom and his family are well known for their philanthropic work. So if you're looking to deal with great people who can fulfill your clothing desires at outstanding prices, do yourself a favor and visit Tom's Place. They're open weekdays from 11 to 6, Saturdays 10 to 5, and Sundays noon to 5. You'll find Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Or check them out online at toms-place.com. Tom's Place will suit you.
Now back to Ted Woloshyn.
Let's talk about what's going on right now with women in sports, because we see it in this city of Toronto. We now have a basketball team, which, interesting enough, Rogers did not want to buy into. Why is that?
Too much on their plate already.
Ed Rogers, or whatever you want to call him, not like
Edward Rogers.
Sports. Edward, does he not like women's sports?
Are you asking me this? Someone who has inside knowledge of Edward Rogers' like and dislike of sports. I think you can reach. I think you can reach a limit of the number of franchises you're responsible for, and I think that I don't want to say caught by surprise, but I remember the days, Ted, where people were like, "Oh, Toronto's not a world-class city unless they get an NBA team." Okay, we got an NBA team. Before that, it was, we're not a world-class city unless we get a baseball team. Okay, we got a baseball team. And now it just seems to me, we've got our MLS team. Okay, we won a championship, MLS Cup, I guess you call it. And now it's sort of like, well, Toronto should have a professional women's hockey team. Oh, okay, we went out and got that. That's good. That's under the same umbrella. And we've got to have a professional women's soccer team, right? We have to. Oh, okay. And now we have to have a WNBA team, a professional women's basketball team. And so now it's like, well, wait a second. This has never happened before, where we have brand new professional franchises every year, because that's what it seems like.
Yeah, but with
like boom, 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 professional team, professional team, professional team, professional team, professional team. Professional league. How about it? We had a new across the country. Ted, if I was a sportscaster today, I wouldn't have the brain capacity to cover all of these sports properly. All of the and know who all the athletes were and what number they are and who they endorse. I mean, to me, it's mind blowing that someone could have the knowledge. And I think I can safely say back in the day that I had the knowledge of almost every sport. Really, I could talk, with confidence on just about every sport, but not now. I can't keep up.
Let me go back to the WNBA. I mean, we could see that it was success in the States. Probably one of the hottest female professional athletes in North America right now is a women's basketball player.
Yep. Caitlin
Why
Clark.
wouldn't I mean Rogers is a business? They're in it to make money. Why wouldn't they? Do they not think that the WNBA is something that can make them more money in
Market
this market?
saturation. Market
They
saturation to me
really,
is this. If you think that the average family has X amount of dollars in spending money to go to sporting events, right?
yeah.
And you happen to own 3 of those that you're pretty sure that you would like these people to go to, attend these games and buy tickets. Now you add another franchise to it. You're giving them another choice, but aren't you watering down from a corporate standpoint? In other words, I think I'll go to the cheaper game there and not have. So, has it been proven that if you have this franchise, this is gold, people will come? Is it the right facility to have it? Is the league strong? Are people going to watch it on television? And can you make money by selling the rights to this? Yeah. How about this, Ted? Is there betting? Are people interested in betting? Can they gamble on these games?
We'll get into that in a second. You can gamble on anything you know.
No. I don't know.
That.
Can you gamble on NWSL games? Can I get a point spread on the National Women's Soccer
By
League
the same
games?
token, you talk about, okay, you only have so much money, but and most people can't afford to buy a ticket for a Leaf game. Forget it. Even for most Raptors game. Blue Jays, that's a different story.
No, that's still pretty expensive.
I know, but you got 81 chances added, so
it still ain't cheap.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So there are some families out there who don't have any option other than going to AAA or the equivalent of that.
Okay, so here's my point. If someone said to you, you're a hockey fan, we can't afford to go to the Maple Leafs game, right? We could afford to go to the Marlies game. But some of it is, are we going just to have a good time, or are we interested in the American Hockey League? Do we know the other teams? Can you name any of the players who play for the Marlies? Do you love them because the good Marlies end up going and playing for the Maple Leafs, right? That farm system, that feeder, where do you start your fans from? Do they first become fans of hockey, then fans of the Marlies, and then you can maybe go to Maple Leaf games?
But you're a father of 2 daughters who love to play basketball, don't give a rat's patootie, as our friend Bob would say, about hockey, but would love to go see a basketball game. Can't afford to go see a Raptors game, but the WNBA, and it's women playing.
Well, wait a second, though. So you're telling me that these girls who love basketball aren't crazy about the NBA, but they are about...
Yeah, but I'm saying they can't afford to go to an NBA
No.
game.
But what do they love?
WNBA.
But what do they love? Would they rather go once a year to a Raptor game, sit up in the nosebleed section, mom and dad save up, or would they rather go see the WNBA to say, "Oh, I saw women's professional basketball"? Are they fans of the WNBA? Different game, no dunking, right?
No,
they can't dunk in that league. Different game. Do you want to watch a big tall woman miss 4 or 5 layups? Get her own rebound every time, and then eventually put the ball in the basket? Is that what you want? Because, in the WNBA, there's a few players that are like that. And, it's a different kind of a game. So if you're a fan of because it's women playing, and you just love basketball, it doesn't matter men, women, great. But I know a lot of young ladies, and middle-aged and older ladies, they're fans of the Blue Jays. But if you told them there was a women's professional baseball league, I'm not sure how many of them would watch because it's women. Well, and these are women admitting that maybe we just aren't as interested as we are in the men.
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
We can only find out.
Speaking of women, let's talk about women in the media, in sports media, and how all that changed, and how for the longest period of time, never mind going into a men's locker room, they were women writing. There were women sports writers who didn't even use their own name because they didn't want people to know it was a woman. They would use initials, or they would change their first name so it sounded like it's a man writing about it.
Correct. There are 2 that I know of. The name Chris and the name Pat are, of course, interchangeable. And so, you had a couple of females. You had one in particular, for example, Nellie Bly was her name, and she was the one who went around the world in less than 80 days as an intrepid reporter, a female reporter, a very well-known reporter. She would interview heavyweight boxers and stuff like that. She was the first, but before that, there weren't bylines in newspapers, so you didn't know who wrote the story. And then eventually, once there were bylines, the fear was that if it was a woman writing it, how could she know anything about anything but, giving birth and keeping house. That's how ridiculous it was. And so it took a while before women wrote. And of course, this would have been women writing about women's sports and women's equal rights when it came to being able to enter sporting events and having the platform that men did. There was very little, if any, women's organized women's sports.
Even women in the Olympics, and some people might be surprised about this. To be honest, I was. Canada, you would think, well, we're a very progressive country, and we're way ahead of everybody else. We were not a leader, not by a long shot, in even entering a Canadian team into the Olympics or Canadian athletes.
Yeah. It wasn't considered to be important to have a national team representing Canada at Olympic Games. First of all, Olympics were still pretty new. And Canada was the kind of nation that wasn't like, well, we got to send a great team to the Olympics. It wasn't a priority for Canadians, right? That close after Confederation. And so the United States was, a little bit ahead, which they usually are, in those types of things. But I think what happened was Canada kind of looked at the U.S. and said, well, if they're not sending women to the 1912 Olympics, we're not going to send women. We don't even have a team. We sort of have a team, but not with women, because there aren't any there are very few women's events in the Olympics. And so all of a sudden there's swimming and diving. And then eventually you would have track and field. Then the Winter Olympics started in 1924, and they would eventually, we'll let the women do something other than figure skating, right? That kind of thing. So it was a very slow progression. So the same was true for women who were writing about sports, and their readers were going to be other women. Hey, girls, come on, let's get exercising. Let's get out there. Let's be active. Right. And it took a while before the Barbara Ann Scotts, actually the Matchless Six, which would have been Ethel Catherwood and Bobby Rosenfeld and these ladies in the 1928 Olympics were the first time that Canada actually, got to perform, females got to represent Canada in the Olympics. It was 1928. And so that was pretty late, right? Really? It took you that long to recognize that we got some pretty good women athletes in Canada? Goes to show you what type of program we had, an Olympic program, a national program. It wasn't that great. Yeah. And it took a while, and it's still not great.
And the first sport that allowed women sports writers to enter their exclusive domain would have been baseball?
No, it would have been hockey, actually. Would have been the 1975 All-Star Game. And Don Cherry had a lot to do with it. Here's the funny thing, is Don Cherry was the one, and there were some, at that time, there were good female sports writers at the Boston Globe, right? And Don Cherry was the one who had said, listen, you want to talk hockey? Come on in. Nope, I don't care. Whatever. And so he made it easy for one in particular, sports writer there. I think Robin Herman of the New York Times actually was the one. And so Robin Herman and another lady named Marcel Saint-Cyr of a radio station in Montreal were given full accreditation at the 1975 NHL All-Star Game. And then every NHL locker room was available to women soon after that, except for Toronto Maple Leafs. Harold Ballard refused. Nope. They want to come in here, they can take their clothes off, like that. Yeah, and that's a whole other chapter of my sportcasting career.
So we fast forward to 1977 and the World Series. The Yankees are playing the Dodgers.
Correct.
And the Yankees were allowing women to come in.
One woman.
If they didn't go into the dressing room, they would go to interview Billy Martin, who's the manager, but because Billy Martin had a second door to his office, which was located in that little compound known as the locker room.
Right. Wasn't that something? So for the entire 1977 season, a reporter, and it was a Sports Illustrated reporter. She was a reporter. She had been elevated to reporter. And I believe her name was Melissa Lincoln. And then it's now Ludke, but I think her maiden name, if I'm not mistaken, or her married name is one of the two. Sorry, but whatever. But she was more of a researcher, and they didn't have any females reporter. They had no female reporters, Sports Illustrated at this particular time. For whatever reason, and they said, okay, we're elevating you to reporter, and we need you to cover the New York Yankees. You're going to cover the New York Yankees for Sports Illustrated. And they had made an arrangement with Billy Martin, the manager of the Yankees, that this woman would be allowed to enter his office via a back door, not into the clubhouse, and be able to get quotes and be able to write a story. get a story written for, for Sports Illustrated. There you go. And so all season long. And then when the World Series came, she went and asked the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Yankees' opponents, whether it would be okay to enter the locker room and be able to get quotes like the other reporters. And they said, as long as you're an accredited reporter of Sports Illustrated, absolutely. And when Bowie Kuhn, the commissioner of baseball, heard this, he said, nope. No woman is going to go in the locker room. It's going to embarrass the player who's there half naked, the families, and what are the wives going to think of the players when women are there?
And that was one of the things that he mentioned as well. He says the wives weren't the Dodgers. They didn't even, the players didn't even ask their wives. Like he cared what the players. What a scam! What a farce!
So he's upholding the sanctity of the game. So now I'm researching this, and I'm going, how bad? Like I had heard that Bowie Kuhn was a jerk, but how bad? So now I'm doing the deep drills. And so for those of you watching, so to do really deep research, you really need to have this this one website. It's called newspapers.com. I highly recommend it. And so you can research just about any newspaper. You can find out what they were writing about the day after the event happened. You can really narrow it down, and you can choose how many newspapers or what periodicals, and you can find out what actually happened, what it was like back then, what they were saying. And it just adds such context, Ted. It was wonderful. So I could actually literally transport you back to that time and what people were thinking, what people were saying, what they were writing about, how they were putting their stories together, how they were slanted in a certain way. It really was quite remarkable, yeah.
So in 1977, Kuhn says, no, this isn't happening. And so they said, okay, well, that's it. We're taking this thing to court.
Yeah.
And it was like the Major League Baseball versus Time, which owned Time Magazine, which owned, before it became Time Warner, with Time Magazine, which owned Sports Illustrated.
Right.
And they went to the Supreme Court.
Right. And the prosecutor, working for, the Time Life or Time Warner was FAO Schwartz III, right? Was like he was the guy, his family owned the big toy store. So anyway, it was a big deal. But of course, Ted, at the time in 1977, 78, when the court was going on, it was huge for women's rights because a few years earlier, they had passed Title IX in the United States, and which basically said that any publicly funded institution in the U.S. has to have an equal number of scholarships for male and female. It has to be equal, right? Now, it wasn't adhered to because these other schools would have said, well, we have to invent new sports then for women to play. It took quite a while, and it still is. But what that did was it raised awareness in the United States especially. It was, hey, wait a second. There's some pretty good athletes out there. I mean, we got some good talent. Look at Billie Jean King just beat this Bobby Riggs. And so this is when I think the women's sports boom started to take off. It was a great thing. And then, of course, now that women are allowed, God forbid, they're allowed in the press box and allowed in the locker rooms, okay, the possibilities were endless. It was only going to be a matter of time before women were going to be coaches, right? And television broadcasters and the first to do this. And now you're going to add not only that, but you're going to add not just women, but now you're going to add other people of color, men and women. And they're going to be gracing our TV screens, and they're going to be the ones that are telling the stories that were specifically
some of these old guys
white males
spinning in their graves, huh?
Unbelievable. And it happened so fast that what happened when these writers were asked, well, what do you think would happen if women were allowed in the press box? They would ask these old writers, what do you think would happen if women were, because they're saying women might be allowed in the locker room. What would happen? And to a man, these guys that were quoted said, oh, it would just ruin sports. It would ruin it because the player needs a place to be able to go where he doesn't feel that, his privacy is being invaded, blah, 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 stuff like that. And when you look at the quotes now, you go, oh my God, how stupid. Yeah. What dinosaurs these men were to think.
So here at home, we had two people who were groundbreakers. Two people, one person that you and I both love as a sports writer, as a writer, and as a person. Unfortunately, both of these women are no longer with us, being Christy Blatchford being the first one.
Yeah, fantastic, right? So Christy Blatchford.
And Blatch had more balls than most guys.
Unbelievable. Had Blatch stayed on as a sports writer, she would have been the greatest sports writer, male or female, that this earth has seen. She had a way of And I'm not just talking about hard news when it came to sports. She was observant and all that, but she had a way she knew the human condition.
Yeah.
And if it was tragic or it was a bad story or the one that, I don't want to ask that question, that's when you would turn to Christy.
Yeah.
But I think that it just became very lonely for her as the only woman traveling, going to the locker rooms, getting kicked out of locker rooms. Christy was doing it before Melissa Ludke got the Supreme Court decision. This was before that. She couldn't get into locker room. The players would have to come out. She would have to find another way to interview them, and coaches, nobody wanted to talk to her. She was the enemy. And so she was absolutely a groundbreaker. And Allison Gordon, who I worked with very closely, was the first member of the Baseball Writers Association of America who was not a man.
That's quite amazing.
Amazing, and she took more abuse than anyone could.
Baseball Writers of America, not Canada. This is Canada and the United States.
And let me tell you something, Ted. And you know how much I love sports and love baseball. Nobody loved baseball more than Allison Gordon. She had a radio in every room in her house. She didn't miss a pitch. Do you understand? Not a pitch. And so she had a memory. She could say, "Oh yeah, back in Oakland that game." And it probably was 1:00 in the morning when she was listening. Back in Oakland, he went to a 3-2 count, 5 batters in a row. No internet. There was no way to look this. She knew this, right? She was detail oriented, and so once players realized how much she knew about baseball, their attitude changed. But it took a while.
It did. There used to be a time, I recall, I'm a fan of Al Michaels. I think Al Michaels is a tremendous broadcaster. People say, he's 81, hang it up. I'm thinking, why? He's still conscious. He's still lucid. He's still very intelligent. He's got great stories. And I don't want to get into a big argument over whether he should or shouldn't. I think the world of Al Michaels. And Al Michaels was one of the first guys I remember watching NFL who would very subtly mention, well, the Bears and the Packers pretty much evenly matched up here. Maybe it's like a field goal that separates.
Yeah.
Which was his way of saying, by the way, the odds are Packers are favored by 3.
Because he knew that everybody. He knew that everybody was betting.
Exactly, but you couldn't say it back then because you'd get smacked on the wrist.
Did you? But here's the thing. I think
we've gone the other way.
I think, but here's the thing. And you mentioned Al Michaels. There's a certain time in your life when you say to yourself, "I can get away with probably just about anything," and the worst thing that could happen to me is X. The worst. But I got to get it out of my system. I got to say it. Because it's been 81 years. I've been dying to say this thing. And so, Howard Cosell in his later days basically said boxing is a sham and corrupt. And because at that age, he didn't give a what.
Yeah.
And I think that Al Michaels, is sort of at that age now where, it wouldn't ruin his reputation. They wouldn't go, forget the Miracle on Ice. Listen to what this guy said when he was 81 years old. And it wouldn't be to the extent of what Don Cherry said, because Don was a commentator. Al was a play-by-play guy who would, could also, weave in some stories and that, but it's a different type of platform. But I think that, I think Al's at that kind of age now, where he wouldn't bite the hand that feeds him. But if you asked him, say, look, tell us a story we haven't heard before about so-and-so in broadcasting or whatever, I bet you he could come up with some dandy stories and not give a what the repercussions were. You told that story about Pete Rose.
Have you read his memoir?
I haven't. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Wonderful book.
There's a great chapter in there just about OJ, not the football player, but about the whole, because they were neighbors. I don't want to get into that.
I know. In Brentwood, they were neighbors in Brentwood. Yeah.
Is gambling going to kill sports?
See, I don't know if it's going to kill it or it's going to make it phenomenal. It's going to my fear is this: gambling is going to make sports a worldwide obsession. Anybody that's got an account, anybody that's got a couple of dollars, you're not going to the movie theaters. Sorry, you're maybe not going to live shows like you did before. You're not going out. You're using that money to gamble. That's your entertainment. And you're basing all of your, let's get together, guys. Let's all get together, watch the game. But while you're doing it, you're gambling. This is especially for young men. And I can tell you for a fact, I know young men. I live in a house with two young people in their 20s. And what happens is this. Social events, as you know, Ted, are based around whatever event you're going to, right? You pre-drink before you go to a concert or you, whatever it is. But the social aspect of being on your device and communicating along with others to the same sort of central thing is a really strong dynamic among young people. It's belonging. It's like being part of a group, a gang, right? And when the game is over, they're all texting each other the same way. They can hardly wait for the next game, the next bet.
Yeah.
And see, this is what worries me, is this is going to take the place of all the guys getting together and playing softball at the park, right? Yeah. Or, I don't know. Or how about this? When you used to get together with your buddies in the basement and smoke a joint, drink a beer, hang out and crack jokes. This is going to replace that. But the gambling part of it is going to be, there's going to be peer pressure for you to always be gambling until something happens bad. And it's going to happen. Something's going to happen.
You know, as long as I can remember, there were always the squares that you'd pick for Super Bowl. So everybody, you'd get together at your local bar and you'd pick some squares. And, I end up with these numbers and these numbers. And it was fun and it was cool and that was it. Now it's like you bet on plays before they happen, like as they're happening. I mean, it's to the point where it just sucks you in to the point where it's sucking the life out of people, it's sucking the fan life out of people. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You're no longer a fan of the game. So I'm a fan of gambling on football as opposed to football.
But Ted, if you read the comments, mostly the negative comments come from people who you know in your mind have bet on that game or on that player and have lost money. And this is a big part of it. You're trying to win your money back as a gambler. And at the same time, you're hoping that a particular player or a particular team bails you out. And now they're your team, for example. Oh, I love this team, the Bears. They won a field goal and I won my money back. But increasingly, you're going to lose more often than you win. And you're going to be upset at those losses. They should have been wins. And you need to point the finger of blame at someone. You don't blame yourself as the gambler. Go, oh, I made a mistake. I picked the wrong team. You blame the coach, the referee, whoever. So in your heart, in your mind now, you're looking to blame someone for your gambling problem. And this is where it becomes more. And because there's so many ads and they're so subliminal, it's like, am I watching a gambling ad? Well, is that a gambling ad on the guy's shoulder? They're so subliminal, and the colors of them. You know, look at some of these commercials and look at the burst of color. Look, it's like being in a casino. They know what to do.
Look at the names of the people that they're hiring to do these ads, and what are they paying these people?
Right, gamble with us, and it's gambling, but look how much fun it is, right? And if you have a problem, call this number. Not enough. There's too much gambling
right now. Whatever they pay for this, it's worth it. It's not a gamble. I guarantee you will not lose by putting your money on this book.
Thank you.
He has one as well. Mark has one because he wrote it.
Got several.
It's called Madness: The Rise and Ruin of Sports Media. Mark Hebscher. Why is everybody in sports media called? Why do they always have to put an SY at the end of everybody's name?
Yeah.
Hey Jonesy, hi Brownsy, hi Groundsy, hi Benzy. Why is everybody a Z?
I believe I was first. No, I think I was second. I think any guy named Smith became Smitty, and then it would have been Hebsy for Hebscher. Yeah, I think we were the second one. Maybe the third. Maybe Jonesy might have been the second one.
All right. Well, I don't do sports, but I like sports. Don't call me Walsy. I appreciate this very much, Mark. It's great seeing you.
Ted, I look forward to seeing you in person very shortly.
Yes, play a little golf.
I hope so.
For money.
Sure.
I see. There you go. The preacher. He wants to play for money. That'll do it for us. Again, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you to Tom's Place for his assistance, to Paul Gatt, our producer, to Bike Thieves for their music. And don't forget to go online and fill out your organ and tissue donation card. You can change or even save a life. In the meantime, have a great week.